Hello and welcome to the Mirror Gaming Walkthrough, the weekly gaming news show. We've got a absolutely packed show for you today, which is all about the Microsoft versus FTC legal duel that's happening this week in federal court in the US. There is so much to talk through. I'm just going to rattle through what we've got. We've got a whole list of stuff, including the fact that Microsoft bought Bethesda because PlayStation tried to make Starfield PlayStation exclusive. What? Microsoft also thinks that Project Q will be under $300. The next Xbox is expected in 2028. Phil Spencer will do whatever it takes to keep COD on PlayStation. Yeah, right. Elder Scrolls 6 is 5+ years away. They can spend Sony out of business. There's just so much to talk about, but we'll be getting deep into that after we have rolled the credits. Are you prepared to go public with your KD online or
no?
Everyone thinks he or she is the best football expert on the planet.
You see it in the back page of the Mirror, deal agreed.
I think the most important thing is just to have fun.
What? 310?
No, what button is it?
well, hello.
We're ready to come for the W, yeah?
Ooh, 12.
Ooh, here we go.
If you can master second man press, you will defend 10 times better.
Today I'm going to be reviewing the PSVR 2 headset.
Hello and welcome to everyone to this Mirror Game Walkthrough podcast. We've got a really packed show, and joining me to discuss everything, the fallout from this, do you get it? Because Bethesda. From everything this week is Matt, Aldus and Aaron. How are you doing both? You all right?
I'm just glad my camera's working.
Green light. We've got a green light, Matt. It's great to see you. Great to see your face.
Yeah, and I'm all good as well. A couple of weeks off the pod. Been here, there and everywhere, it feels like. So, but it's good to be back to sink our teeth into this juicy topic that keeps giving. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great to have you back to talk about this. And I'm glad you had a good time out in LA for Mirror Gaming as well, looking at loads of previews of games and stuff. And you can see all that on the Mirror Gaming YouTube channel. And first of all, as well, thank you to everyone who's tuning in to the Mirror Gaming Walkthrough this afternoon. It's going to be a packed topic. And for people that don't know, Microsoft are in federal court this week defending their proposed $68.7 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard, the publisher who makes Call of Duty, Overwatch, etc., following legal action by the FTC in the US. So basically, the FTC don't want it to go through, and Microsoft are having to present loads of evidence to show that it should go through. But there's a lot of stuff that's come out in the wash. There's so much to talk about, but we'll start with the fact that, and Aaron, you mentioned this off camera as well, but Microsoft are having to give away all these internal emails as part of the evidence. And one of the emails that's come out is an Xbox exec, Matt Booty, talking to Microsoft CFO Tim Stewart, in which Matt Booty, I've got the email here. I'm looking at the email. How mad is that? And I will read it as it is. This is Matt Booty to Tim Stewart. A different view to the general view might be that we, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business. If we think that video game content matters in 10 years, we might look back and say, totally would have been worth it to lose 2 or 3 billion in 2020 to avoid a situation where Tencent, Google, Amazon, or even Sony have become the Disney of games and own most of the valuable content. He goes on to talk about what they can do and talk about Google and how it's hard to convince people like Mixer or xCloud. Mixer, blasting the past there. But yeah, what do we make of that? Firstly, the fact that Microsoft have openly said in emails internally that, we could just spend Sony out of business.
Yeah, it's no secret. Like, as much as Microsoft kind of wants it to be, that Microsoft and by de facto Xbox are in a very unique position that it doesn't primarily. Well, I doubt it makes much money from games at all these days. So, but for other arms of the business, the higher ups at Microsoft, Bill Gates and what have you, they clearly see value in the future of gaming to the extent that they're prepared to incur losses in the short term if it means that they're able to dominate in the gaming space. Like as Matt Booty puts it in that internal email for the next 10 years. I just think it's not sportsmanship like. is the best way I could put it. Like, it's not in the spirit of, like, my instant reaction, and obviously I've got this reputation as being like a Sony pony or whatever, because, you know, I like the way PlayStation tends to do things, especially when it comes to like acquisitions and exclusive content. But I'm just kind of like, I'm reading all this and I'm seeing this come in, and I'm just like, what gives you the right? It's like when you're playing Monopoly, to use an analogy, you're playing Monopoly, and Microsoft just takes as much of the money as it wants to buy up all of the, in this case, developers on the board. Like, it hasn't reached that position fairly because it's outside income that's allowing it to do so. And then the last point, just specifically on this email, because everybody knows this is the intention. Everybody knows that Xbox would love it if Sony wasn't, you know, making PlayStation content. But it's this sort of Phil Spencer and co. speaking out of both sides of their mouth, telling gamers one thing, like, oh, we just want to be everywhere. We want to make all gamers can play together. And then it's hardly surprising to see Matt Booty say, we could just spend PlayStation out of business. We got the money. Let's go to Daddy Microsoft. Daddy Microsoft, can I have 50p to spend PlayStation out of business? Oh, thank you. That's the only way I could put it. That's what's happening. It's ridiculous.
Matt, what do you make of that email?
I mean, I think the thing that I would say to what Aaron's just saying is, how many times have are we sitting here thinking PlayStation have never had those conversations too? like I think like there's been loads of examples of PlayStation making games exclusive to PlayStation, like, and, you know, buying out developers to make those games exclusive and all sorts. But like, it's still like a look under the hood, like it's kind of, I mean, I just think it's juicy. It's like juicy gossip, like, and I've never really thought about like the sort of business company aspect from those sorts of conversations, and what we're seeing coming out is just more and more of those sorts of conversations like taking place. And I agree with Aaron, it's not sportsmanship like at all. I think it's underhanded. Like, I wouldn't like to do that if I owned a company, but then I don't own a company, and I don't know what the parameters of competition are like. Like, I don't know how shady they're actually being, or to me, this feels like this is probably the done thing across multiple industries. Like, you've got one company and two companies competing against each other, and they're both thinking, how can we get the other one out of business? But I do think it's quite a shocking thing to sort of say, you know, we're like seriously thinking about how we can get them out of business. Like, I think that's the aspect that's like, it's one thing to want a company to be out of business so that you can sort of hold the monopoly on all of those things, but it's a completely different thing to say, like, to sort of implicate or imply that you're actually having conversations around how we would do it. And I think that's kind of, it feels like there's going to be a movie about it in the next 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm so with you, Matt. I think just watching and listening to all this stuff come out, it's fascinating. I just can't get enough of it. I'm just lapping it up. I just want, who's next on the stand? Like, what's going to come out next? It's so good.
Imagine if it was live streamed, like the Depp versus Heard case.
I know.
Was.
I would I mean, I'd book a week off work.
Guys, it'd be on now. We'd be watching it now. Forget the podcast. We'd be watching it now live. We'd be reacting to it live. I think it'd be amazing. I just want to get back onto that email because there is something right at the bottom that I wanted to discuss as well. Matt says to Tim, Sony is really the only other player who could compete with Game Pass, and we have a 2-year and 10 million subs lead. So even back then in 2019, when the email was sent, we're looking at 4 years ago now, Xbox, Aaron, you've been like banging on the Xbox Game Pass drum for forever now. That just proves it, doesn't it? That they're just thinking about who can compete with Game Pass, and then that'll be their sort of thing moving forward. And it's interesting that Sony, I know they've got PS Plus and stuff, but they haven't really sort of competed with Xbox in that way, and maybe the way that Microsoft expected they would.
Yeah, and like I again, it's gonna be. I'm gonna sound a bit like a broken record, but I applaud PlayStation for not buying into Xbox's game. Like Xbox has tried forcing Nintendo and PlayStation into this subscription market, cloud-based service market, and to a certain extent, I'd say they're like half successful because it did lead PlayStation to reboot PS Plus. I think it was earlier this year, wasn't it? Or end of last year. And Nintendo, with their whole Nintendo Switch Online, have managed to resist it for the time being. So to a certain extent, it's kind of worked from a PR perspective in terms of gaining them favor with players. Like, look what we can offer you for this small price compared to what the other guys. But that's only because they haven't had the first party exclusives to back it up. Like, there's nothing on Game Pass that has come out in the last 3 years, ironically, since this email came out, with the exception of maybe Forza Horizon 5, I would argue, and Halo Infinite a push. That makes Xbox Game Pass a must subscribe from a first party perspective anyway. That's why they're constantly having to make deals with like indie games and indie game makers. So yeah, that's clearly their plan, and it has been since 2019. I'm trying to work out what month exactly. This was sent in December, as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
and Game Pass launched in April. So I do think it's interesting that like Game Pass, even back then, they only had like what was it, 8 months of success to gain a good standing with Xbox Game Pass, and already they were like banking. They were fully committed to it. But obviously back then they weren't expecting to hit a subs plateau as early as they did, which is the sort of stuff we've been hearing this year. And I don't want to jump ahead too much, but Jim Ryan goes on to address when he was giving his deposition about his concerns over Game Pass, because this would have been before. Or it would have been before around the same time that Phil Spencer was saying, publishers and developers, they actually love Game Pass because when people download a game on Game Pass, it means they buy it. I'm like, in what world is that the case where, I can play this game for free right now, ostensibly for free, but I tell you what, here's my money anyway. I play a lot of games. I'm sure all of us here do. And really, it's only, there are very few instances where I think of something like Rocket League, where I got that free for PlayStation Plus, and I put in literally like tens of hundreds of hours, to the point where I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give them some money. Like, and I imagine even then that's a stretch for most players. So yeah, it's very telling. But Game Pass is,
And a year before the launch of the Series X as well, in 2020, released in December 2020, I think, wasn't it?
It's funny to see them name check Google as well, because I think this would have been, Stadia was around by this point, but it was I don't know. I think it was still up in the air. So
yeah, absolutely.
Those days
and
are
just on the subject that we just speaking about in terms of Microsoft openly saying about spending Sony out of business. Then the next thing that I wanted to discuss was the fact that Phil Spencer admitted that the reason that they bought Bethesda was because PlayStation were going to take Starfield as a PlayStation exclusive. So essentially, he was like, "All right, we'll just buy him then." I've got the quote here, which is Spencer said, "ZeniMax is a great example. When we acquired ZeniMax, one of the impetus for that was that Sony had done a deal with Deathloop and Ghostwire and pay effectively Bethesda to not ship those games on Xbox. It was then necessary to secure ownership of ZeniMax and Starfield to keep up its rate of new games on Xbox. He said, we can't be in a position as a third-place console where we fall further behind on our content ownership." So essentially, we know now that he bought Bethesda, or Xbox bought Bethesda, because Starfield was close to escaping them, and they'd already seen Deathloop and Ghostwire go onto PlayStation 5 exclusively, and were like, that is not happening again, and they did it. So that is, I would argue, that was part of the strategy that we talked about before. That seems to be part of the thing that Matt and Tim were talking about in that email. That seems to have been following that discussion. Okay, let's just buy Bethesda. Let's stop Bethesda making PlayStation games. Let's just take it off their hands, and then we can just put it all onto Xbox. And that's what's happened with Redfall and Starfield, which is coming out in September.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Because I mean, there's two halves of me like here. Like I was talking about earlier, I kind of half think that it's really underhanded and kind of wrong to be able to even do that. But then, like I said, PlayStation have done that a bunch of times, like trying to make PlayStation exclusives and stuff. So it feels like if it was a battle to if they were trying to make Starfield exclusive to PlayStation, which, you know, of course, why wouldn't you try and make it exclusive to your company? It feels like they just won that, battle. But the way they had to win it is kind of, rather than make a deal and make a better deal, like they just went straight in for the kill and just bought the company. But it's just there's that I don't know how much of an element there is of games developers sort of thinking PlayStation first still when they're thinking about games and releasing games. So I wonder
a lot
if, like, you know, even if they tried to make a deal, that they wouldn't be able to, because they're already thinking, we're going to give it to PlayStation because it's just, you know, for whatever reason, that is the favored company. So it's like, I'm kind of on the fence about whether I think it's like really bad or actually fair play to them for actually winning it. And just sort of going, well, if you're going to do that, PlayStation, watch this. Like, and it kind of does, but with all this other stuff going on around it, it kind of makes it feel a little bit more dirty. It's not just a straight bid for like a game to be exclusive on your console. There's all this other stuff going around as well that just adds this layer of sort of shadiness to it to me. Like, and I don't know, but they won the game, and I guess they're allowed to do that. That, like I say, the thing that shocks me is that you're allowed to do that. There's no regulation in place to say, no, you just have to bid and make a deal and offer the best deal and, you know, get it that way. But rather than just buy out, because that suddenly starts feeling like somebody's trying to monopolize something, and that's never really a good thing, in my view.
Well, that's why they're in court in the first case.
Exactly,
isn't it?
yeah.
They didn't mind Bethesda being bought, but then as soon as the Activision gets bought for, I think the 68.7 billion
That's
doesn't
what did
help.
Like,
how much? How much are you spending? But Aaron, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, yeah, I agree with what you said. The reason why we're even talking about this, like almost 2 years after it happened, is because of Bobby Kotick's and the share and the board's greed, essentially. Like, they could only come to a figure that was ridiculous, and, you know, 60, almost pushing 70 billion. But I just want to pick up on something that Matt sort of brought up, because yes, PlayStation do make exclusivity deals with publishers, and we're seeing that right now. We're right in the middle of it in terms of Final Fantasy 16. Sales numbers for that came out today. It released not even a week yet, I don't think, and it sold like 3 million copies, which is a lot for a game that's platform exclusive. And Xbox has done this before. For Xbox 360, they secured Rise of the Tomb Raider. And I would argue that in that instance, it was a bit more underhanded, to use Matt's term, because the previous game in that series was multi-platform. So they were actively taking it away. Like Tomb Raider was on PlayStation, then it wasn't, because Xbox threw its money around. And I just think, like, yeah, they can do this. They can take the monopoly money, from behind, to you carry on that with analogy. But all this is because, and the reason they call themselves, they're like, oh, woe is me, we're third place competition, and we simply couldn't allow us to fall behind any further. The reason you're falling behind any further is because you refuse to put out good games in a timely manner, which is what people buy consoles for. This is a mess of your own making, and they're trying to buy their way back into being competitive. And we as players are going to end up suffering in the long term as a result, both in terms of I own a PlayStation and now I can't play this game on PlayStation, and Xbox Game Pass is suddenly so expensive because they've priced out everyone else in terms of the subscription market. So I've got a lot of trouble trying to build up any form of sympathy for Xbox, which is basically the entire play in the FTC court case. It's like, look, we're losing, we're actually not that bad. It's like, well, if you're losing, you're not that bad. Again, to go back to that point, what gives you the right to try and, there are no, why do you get a shortcut? Matt said that PlayStation could have done this as well. The difference is that they can't. They don't have 69 billion just on the side to throw at anybody they like. And, PlayStation, Sony, for the longest time, I don't know what the case is now, like the gaming arm was the only arm that made money. and I think that's very telling. Whereas it's the complete inverse on the Microsoft side. The gaming side, the Xbox division, makes very little money, and it still doesn't make very little money. Whereas PlayStation is one of the main money makers in terms of Sony, and they've got that way there, in my opinion, for the most part, fairly. And this whole thing about Deathloop and Ghostwire went to PlayStation because they secured exclusivity deals. Again, to go back to my initial point of it's a mess of Microsoft's own making. When this initial quote came out that Xbox bought Bethesda because Starfield was at risk of becoming PlayStation exclusive. That's at the point where you as Xbox need to take a look at yourself and think, right, why is this happening? What have we done to the extent that publishers don't feel comfortable putting games on our platform? And the simple answer is that they screwed people over and players over on the Xbox One generation, despite having a very heavy lead during the generation before, Xbox 360, which they bungled as soon as they revealed the Xbox One, to the point that they're trailing behind, that they don't want to announce the amount of Xbox One units sold. Now they don't want to announce the amount of Xbox Series X units sold. So if I'm Todd Howard at Bethesda, I'm looking at, okay, PlayStation sold 10 million, Xbox has sold 3 million. And not only that, but PlayStation are offering us some money to sweeten the deal. Then, surprise, surprise, Deathloop and Ghostwire are going to go on PlayStation. And if Xbox didn't have that money purse, then it wouldn't happen. But if I was Xbox, I'd be saying, right, well, why is our Xbox only selling this much? Oh, it's because we're not putting out games at a fast enough rate, exclusive games from our own internal studios. That makes people want to buy an Xbox over PlayStation. Whereas PlayStation's got Spider-Man, PlayStation's got God of War, PlayStation's got Ratchet and Clank, PlayStation's got Demon's Souls. It's got all these great first-party games. It always comes back to the games, guys. And this is what Xbox says they understand, except their left hand's doing one thing and their right hand's doing another thing, because they're like, oh, we believe in great games. We're making great games. And I brought it up before, but had they not bought Bethesda, we'd be looking at a very barren release calendar for Xbox Series X right now. So the fact that Xbox can stand there and say to the FTC, we're not going to make Call of Duty exclusive. We are we're not going to, when literally, and it also came out this week that the Indiana Jones game was originally signed up to be multi-platform for PlayStation prior to the Bethesda thing. They're ripping games away, Redfall, Indiana Jones from PlayStation, who have built up that reputation fairly, and Xbox have just come in and they're trying to spend their way back into competition. And the last point, because I know I've been going long on this, but particularly with the Starfield thing, I've been away for 2 weeks, guys. Apologies. So I've got a lot to say. It's the whole, I was in a room with Todd Howard, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, and Phil Spencer after the Xbox showcase. And Todd Howard said, they've been doing this line in all of the Starfield marketing. We've had a great relationship with PlayStation in the past. Oblivion came to Xbox. The best version of Skyrim was on Xbox. And now I find it very interesting that Todd Howard's going, oh, we're so chummy with Xbox. We're so chummy with Xbox. Well, up until 2 years ago, there was a point where none of your games were apparently going to be on Xbox. So at this point, it's just confirmed to me that regardless of what these business people say at the top, they're just telling you what you want to hear. Okay, rant over. Oh, sorry, guys.
Amazing. It's so strange to me because Microsoft is a software company. They're a software. Yeah. Their whole business is software. So why aren't they focusing on software?
They don't make TVs, do they?
No,
the Microsoft phone's not a thing anymore.
No, the physical business is so small in comparison. Like we said before, I think like the consoles are probably losing enough that like breaking even just about. But their whole thing is software, and like you said, Microsoft obviously. All their money is in probably enterprise and business solutions and stuff, right? Selling Microsoft licenses and software. But their games division seems to be all around like the software just isn't coming like what you said, Aaron. It's just very, very, very strange. I've got a few comments before you chime in, Matt. Just want to address JD Incinerators in the chat. Hiya, thanks so much for watching, and Connor's in the chat as well. Kyle is also in the chat. Hi, Kyle. He says, I agree with Aaron. With the lead Game Pass has had over PS Plus, they lack competition to include consistent and genuinely interesting titles, so it seems they've gotten lazy. Yeah, it's a very good comment. Connor's also saying, Aaron, Guinness World Record for most words without a breath. Yeah, I think we should have timed that, actually. Good. That was a great work, Aaron, on that one. But yeah, JD as well. I think Xbox aren't interested in doing what the gamers want. Now, if they want to find other ways to gain advantages over PlayStation and Nintendo, they know gamers will buy Xboxes and play games on it. What are they playing on them?
Exactly.
What?
They don't sell
What?
Xboxes. They're trying to get out of making Xboxes. Hence why they're forming relationships with Samsung to have Xbox Game Pass pre-installed. All they want to do is sell you subscription to Game Pass, and if they could, not sell Xboxes to do that, they would.
Yeah,
I promise you.
absolutely. Matt, have you got any comments on Aaron's monologue?
Oh, I just feel like I've just been told off. That's
Oh, it's not directed at you.
No,
You're not Phil Spencer, don't worry.
But like, it's like, I think like Aaron is way more involved in the sort of like gaming world, and he's just been to LA, and he's got way more experience than I have, like with interacting with these companies like on a daily basis. And it's quite interesting because I feel like I've just learned a lot, like, from that perspective. I do think what you're saying is right. I guess like when PlayStation have built themselves up to be a front runner in the console space, how does you say like how like a competitor like Xbox needs to just release good games and that'll do it? But I don't know if I believe that. Like, that's not how it works. Like, they've got to a point now where something like PlayStation have to also do really badly over the next, like, release a bunch of really bad games over the next few years, and Xbox release a bunch of good ones for that to have any kind of shift. Like, there's not, like, you can't just start putting out good games and hope that people come. That's not how business works, and they wouldn't ever. So from a business perspective, what else would you expect them to do if their goal is to take over? And I think what JD says is right. Their main focus seems to be not doing what gamers want, but their main focus seems to be getting a competitive advantage over their competitors, rather than being like game first. So I completely agree with like the sentiment of what Xbox are doing, with what Aaron's saying, and I completely agree with pretty much everything you were saying. I just wonder, like, how does that actually work? What else can they do if they've got a goal? There's not really another strategy that's gonna work, because the one you're suggesting will take decades.
But it's not. This is what I mean. Like, they're trying to play it as a shortcut. When PlayStation, okay,
which isn't fair. I do.
Strap in, Matt. Strap in, Matt.
Hold on, I just want to say before. I just want you to know, so I don't feel like I'm getting told off again.
No.
I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's like, it does feel underhanded. I'm just sort of saying what I feel from like a business point of view, rather than like what gamers want. Because if it's from what gamers want, then they should absolutely just start focusing and investing a lot more into creating games that people want to play.
But how crazy is it that we're having a conversation now where Xbox is potentially not doing what gamers want, and they're in the gaming industry? Like, how is that an effective battle plan, like, going forward? Like, they think they're doing what gamers want, and the worst part is that gamers think that Xbox are doing what gamers want through Game Pass, because they're making it more affordable, and there's a lot of tenants there. But you said that it's a long road back for Xbox to win, and guess what? It is. And PlayStation, they've got the best selling console of all time in the PlayStation 2, and coming out of the PlayStation 2 generation, they had that exec that said PS3 is coming out now, and we think people will get a second job to buy a PS3. That's how on top we are. And guess what? Xbox came in with the 360. They had a great system. They invested in Xbox Live, which was an up-and-coming framework. Online gaming, at least in the console space, hadn't really taken off yet. And 360 was able to overtake PS3, and PS3 was not a success at the beginning. But then what happened? Games like Uncharted 2 started coming out. Killzone. God of War games continue to inspire people. All Shadow of the Colossus remake, all these games, great games for PS3, that eventually saw the PS3 generation overtake 360. And the same thing happened when Xbox 360 came out at the tail end of that generation. I can't remember who it was, whatever his name, but he basically said, "Oh, the Xbox One's coming out, and if you haven't got an internet connection, we've got a great console for you. It's called the Xbox 360." So they got too proud. And I feel like, just to go off more what Matt's saying, because I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there is some value to it. And it's a case of They need to make great games. I keep saying it, guys. They need to make great games. It's not enough just to get third-party games off. You need the exclusives. And I feel like if you were to talk to Phil Spencer, he'd say that's exactly what we're doing. We just bought Bethesda and we're trying to buy Activision so we can have those exclusive games. But the difference is that we all lose because games that were previously going to come out multi-platform aren't no longer like. And I feel the need to reiterate this again. I have a Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation. I can play all the games that come out, guys. I've not really got a horse in this race as much as it seems like I have. And the good news is for Xbox, and I feel like you're seeing this now, is they just had a really great Xbox game showcase. Avowed looks great. Clockwork Revolution looks great. All these games, they've got an exciting 2024 if they can actually get these games out the door. And by contrast, PlayStation are setting themselves up to fail, if you ask me, because their showcase was an absolute disaster, aside from Helldivers 2, which is a personal favorite of mine, because what single-player, cinematic, action-focused games, the games that have put them on top up until now, the God of Wars, the Horizons, did we see? None. Spider-Man 2 is the only game coming out from PlayStation first party this year of that type in October. And the only other first-party games we saw, we know this because Jim Ryan said it, 60% of PlayStation funds going forward are being invested in live service games. Live service games like Fair Games, the Naughty Dog Factions multiplayer spin-off, and guess what? They're all going to fail because it's not what PlayStation want. Live service strategy is a very tricky game to play. And you're seeing that now with Naughty Dog having to reboot internally Factions after Bungie took a look at it and said that it wasn't good enough. So I feel like, just to conclude finally, what Matt's saying, PlayStation are setting themselves up to fail. I truly believe that in the next 2 to 3 years. They're not going to provide what gamers want. This is Xbox's time to shine. And yeah, they could turn the tide around if you ask me.
I'm going to use bread as an analogy.
Okay,
so Matt,
I'm interested.
so this is basically what's happening. Imagine I start a bread shop, a bakery, right?
Everyone,
all
Nathan's
I make
just
is
bought himself a bread maker,
right.
So that's
yeah. This is why I'm using.
Right, that's where this has come from.
This always comes up in meetings, right? So this is what I'm going to use as my analogy. I'm Microsoft, and I'm just going to start a bread company where I'm going to deliver bread to people, right? But I can't be bothered to make the bread myself. I'm getting people call me and be like, "Where's the bread? Where's the bread?" I'm like, I need to make bread. I know. I'll just go to the bakery and just buy that bakery and get them to make them for me. That'll be quicker. Instead of me investing in a bread maker, instead of me investing in the ingredients, instead of actually investing money and time in the long-term goal of making the best bread for people. I shouldn't have used that analogy. Very, very dangerous.
It was always going to fail.
Yeah. Instead of putting time and effort and thinking about the long-term strategy of I'm going to make the best bread for people in the long term, I'm going to develop my craft, I'm going to hone it, I'm going to become the best bread maker in the world, right? Instead of doing that, I'm like, you know what? I can't be bothered to buy the bread maker. I can't be bothered to buy the flour. Forget all the flour and the yeast, whatever. I'm just going to go and buy that bakery that are doing really well over there, and they can make it for me. That's what Microsoft are doing with Activision. That's what they've done with Bethesda. That's what they've done with all the other companies.
But not only that, Nathan, they're buying that bread company, and then half the street are no longer going to be able to.
Yeah, half the street have been cut off from the bread.
And in your analogy, I really like your analogy because what is the value that Xbox is adding? Nothing.
Can I just add to the analogy? Because it's not just that they're buying the bakery; they're closing the bakery down and just using the kitchen, like that, because so nobody else can go to that bakery anymore. Like,
they've locked it off. Yeah, closed. Yeah,
that makes sense. But I think my retort would be, and it's not really.
But Microsoft could have invested in games development.
I know they could have
20 years ago.
Protecting them in any way, shape, or form, but it's like
the annoying thing. Sorry, man.
It just seems like we're so and rightly so, by the way. Like we're so sort of het up about like this happening in the gaming space, but it happens everywhere else. I don't know if going on the bakery thing, I don't know if Greg's started by opening one branch, but now, do you think Greg's owns Greg's, or do you think another company owns Greg's and it's a big chain? Like
business is all about exit strategies, and
that's all.
Yeah.
It happens
But
everywhere.
the difference with this bit in particular is that normally, I know you're talking about like investment groups, right, that buy businesses and just for the money and stuff. But this is a company that they're saying they make bread, but they only make bread through the companies they're bought to make bread. They don't actually make any bread
and not
themselves.
only
That's the difference.
They're unqualified,
Yes.
in my opinion, to buy those bread companies, because the bread companies they've started themselves have failed so far, and they don't produce good bread.
Is there any
This is
chance we can do the rest of the podcast only talking about bread?
Bread. I don't know, it might be carb
I mean, Connor in the chat has said Nathan's analogy was pretty stale, in my opinion. Nice.
That is
Nice.
brilliant.
But essentially, Matt, you're right. If you look at it now, from like if you outside onlooker looking in, they want to buy Activision because they want Call of Duty, right? They want Overwatch. They want they want the King games. They want Candy Crush, right? They want all that because they're trying to, but they've had literally decades to invest in their own studios and put the money in. $68.7 billion. What they could have invested half of that over the last 10 years and actually invested in their own studios to make great games, and they would be in a way better position than they are now, and they'd be leading. Take got such an advantage monetary wise over Sony and PlayStation. They could have blown them out of the water by now, but the reason they're not is because they haven't put the work in. They just want to take shortcuts every time. Bethesda want to make Starfield exclusive to PlayStation. We'll just buy them then.
But right, let's go.
We're going to do that every time. Like,
exactly.
Going to buy Square Enix eventually, are they? Because they keep making Final Fantasy games.
It's like that. It's like they're hearing about it at the final moment.
They might do.
They might too. Well, to go back to the FTC specifically, there was that list of 100 companies, and I believe Capcom and Sega were all
Sega, IO Interactive.
Yeah, they were literally like, and that shows me like how just sort of like stupid their mentality is, where it's like, what game should we purchase? Should we put thought into the game companies we want to buy and work with potentially? No, just slap them all on and we'll see which one.
Yeah. Should we get Warburton? Should we get Hovis?
Kingsmill. Yeah. But it's
that new wholemeal bread's coming out later this year. I need some of that exclusively to our bakery. Absolutely. Sorry, Matt, you were going to say something before.
I think Aaron was in the middle.
Oh, sorry, Aaron.
I was just going to say, like, another side to this is that, like, you've got games that were announced prior to the Xbox acquisition, like Hellblade 2, that I'm 90% sure would have come out and released by now, were they not purchased by Xbox as well? So what is going on internally that these production pipelines are slowing down? I'm all for giving devs, like, as much time as they need, and, but there comes a point where it's like, guys, we got to get this out the door. Come on, and then you can move on to the next thing. Then that can come out in a timely way. And honestly, even with the Bethesda stuff, like it's already come out 6 years until Elder Scrolls 6, which you bet your ass, excuse my French, I don't know if that is on the line. Sorry, YouTube.
It's fine.
Will be exclusive to Xbox, and they're dancing around the subject now.
Yeah,
I mean, like going a little bit back.
Did that bread analogy help, Matt? First of all.
Oh yeah, I completely understood.
Or an ice cream analogy, whoever that ice cream van is.
Oh wait, that's because I got my window open.
Oh, can you get me a fab?
Anyone want a 99 fake?
They're $2.99 now. They're $2.99. I had one the other day.
At least
$2.99
$99 in the price.
Yeah, well, I mean that's not no consolation, is it?
No, not really. But what, like something that I think, like, I would just point out, and obviously this isn't like the case with every single game that PlayStation will put out, but and I don't know if this is even like, I'm talking from I'm completely like ignorant to how rights work and stuff, but I would assume, like, who owns the rights to Spider-Man, for example? Sony.
Well, Sony, because
right?
So they negotiated with Marvel, didn't they, for the Spider-Man?
Yeah, and so they have a relationship with Marvel. So they as well, but Sony are in the world of television characters, and like being able to take those characters, like, and have access to the rights, and buy the rights. So in a sense, like, buying the rights to a character, it, like, and then making a game from it is kind of the same as buying a company and then making a game.
But here's
It's
the
a little
thing,
bit
Matt.
different with Marvel. Sorry, in that
Marvel don't
particular
own
case,
Spider-Man. Marvel
no,
wants Spider-Man, but they
but
don't own it.
only the only reason they want it now is because before they were like Marvel as we know them now, before Marvel Studios and all that, they were not bothered about Spider-Man, and they were like, we want to sell Spider-Man, and that's where Sony got their chance to get into it. And now they've got Marvel over a barrel because Marvel wants Spider-Man back, but Sony have actually got them absolutely pants down with that.
With the Spider-Man PlayStation exclusivity thing, because I agree it's like confusing. Like if you're just coming into it, like Spider-Man, why is that only on PlayStation? You know, The reason that PlayStation is that Spider-Man's only on PlayStation is because it's made by Insomniac, which is a first-party studio. So PlayStation would have agreed, like, okay, Insomniac would have pitched to Sony, Marvel, whoever it is, here's our vision for a Spider-Man game. But the catch is, because we're first-party, we don't make games for other platforms. It has to be PlayStation only. That doesn't stop Microsoft from taking one of their first-party studios and saying, we'd like to make X game. We'd like to make a Wolverine game. We'd like to make a Cyclops game. And I know this, I'm 90% sure this is the case, because after the original Spider-Man came out, I can't remember what year it was, but a game called Ultimate Alliance 3 released exclusively for Nintendo Switch. And that was made by Team Ninja. But what character's in that game? Spider-Man. Spider-Man is on a Nintendo Switch console. And then we recently had Marvel's Midnight Suns towards the tail end of last year, features Spider-Man in it. It's out on Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. It's not on Nintendo Switch, but, you know, Steam as well. So it's not a case of like, it's basically, what are you bringing to the table? In the case of Bethesda with Starfield, Ghostwire Tokyo and all that, what are you bringing to the table? And Xbox isn't bringing very much to the table at the moment. Oh, we can put it on Game Pass. Does Game Pass make us money? No, you'd make more money if you sold it on PlayStation. Well, there's the problem. Do you know what I mean?
I fall into that trap all the time when I was watching the Starfield Direct. Oh, at last, like, Xbox have got a first-party game. It's not. They bought Bethesda. It's not a true first-party game, is it? Because it's a studio they bought. What is the last huge first-party game that genuinely first-party game? The Forza series, right? That is what else?
Halo Infinite, and they struggled to get
Halo
that out
Infinite.
the door.
What else?
Couldn't tell you. Could not tell you.
That is the difference. And then if you look at PlayStation, you could literally it would take you 15 minutes to reel them off, and that's the difference. That is the difference in a nutshell between the philosophies of both companies.
I just wish I knew what was going on at companies like the Coalition, who have, you know, historically made Gears of War 4, Gears of War 5 games for the Xbox One.
Yeah.
Compulsion Games, we finally know what they're working on now through a cinematic trailer. We haven't really seen gameplay, but just like what's happened, Microsoft, where are these first party games? Like, I don't know, man. I do not know, because even I don't want to get into it.
I know. And on that note, the whole reason Microsoft are in federal court is because of their acquisition of proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which would include obviously Call of Duty, Overwatch 2, the King as well, who is one of the biggest mobile games publishers in the world. I think Candy Crush, games like that. Phil Spencer, in his testimony, it was quite a funny moment, I think, from some of the journalists that I follow. It was quite a funny moment where the judge had to remind Phil Spencer that he was under oath when he was talking about this, which is quite funny. And Phil Spencer then said, "I would raise my hand. I will do whatever it takes. We have no plan. I'm making a commitment standing here that we will not pull Call of Duty. It is my testimony from PlayStation." He then goes on to say that we will continue to ship future versions of Call of Duty on Sony's PlayStation 5. But the funny thing is that all this has come out about Bethesda, and then buying Bethesda for Starfield, then buying other publishers for Starfield, and then the opposite of this is happening. Who believes him?
Well, that's what his word means nothing.
His actions are literally the opposite of what his words are saying. Like, I just, it doesn't make any sense. On one hand, he's openly admitting, we bought Bethesda because it was in charge. It was going to go to PlayStation, and he's in a position where he's like, we're really weak. We're the third console manufacturer. We're behind Nintendo and Sony. Like, it's really bad for us. But honestly, if we get Call of Duty, we won't take it away from you. Honestly, like, I just,
and I think who believes a lot there. Go on, Matt.
He was very careful to say PlayStation 5 as well.
Yeah, we picked
and
that
he
up.
also said
PlayStation
versions
6.
of Call of Duty as well, not
Future
the next
versions
of Call of Duty.
Yeah.
We might keep putting Warzone on PlayStation consoles because it's free to play. We can't sell it, and we'll happily take that microtransaction.
He didn't say all versions of Call of Duty.
Nope.
He didn't say, like, he So they could decide to make Warzone exclusive to Xbox, and then like just release the games like multi-platform, or keep Warzone multi-platform and release the games just on Xbox going forward. And all of that would mean that what he said in court is still true, because technically, but so I think that there's something much more sinister in that sense going on. And I do strongly believe that if it goes through after this week, if this goes through, Call of Duty will become at some point in the future, whether it's the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, it will become Xbox exclusive.
10 years is the minimum that's been talked about. But can I just say, like, with the whole like Activision and Bethesda thing, from my perspective, I'm quite lucky because I don't really give a rat's ass about Bethesda games or Activision games. Like, you can have Call of Duty if you want it. Like, it's no great loss to me. But most Bethesda games are
no Paladins
anyway. No, not as good as Paladins, RIP. So just to address some of these comments as they're coming in while I still remember what they're talking about, Nathan. But Yobcap says, you don't know they're coming as detailed in the showcase in regards to where are the Xbox first party exclusives.
Right, okay.
Right. Yeah. So they're finally coming 4 years after the console launched. Okay, awesome. If you've owned an Xbox Series X now, what have you played on it, for one? And I
played FIFA games. That's it, literally.
Yeah. I guarantee you now. I think there was about 5 or 6 first-party games that they put the 2024 label on. They're not all coming out in 2024. No way on this earth. Avowed might end up getting delayed. And then Scott says, I will say in Phil's defense, Microsoft kept Minecraft on anything after buying it, even porting it to new platforms. But the genie was already out of the bottle in that case. Minecraft is a game. It's not sequelized. So what are they going to do? Like, go around to everyone's house who owns it on PlayStation and take it off their shelf and say, no, it's Xbox only now. It's not the world we're living in.
Yeah. Imagine if you're.
I mean, to add to that as well, they've made other titles exclusive after saying they wouldn't, like Xbox. So, you know, that is just, it feels like the Minecraft thing is just, it was too far gone. They're you know, they're with something that they can, like they would be. I think they wouldn't think twice about actually trying to do it.
Yeah, and just on the note about, he talked about. We've got some comments coming in the chat. Yeah, talk about what gamers want. Imagine in 5 years, 10 years time, right? In 5 years, apparently we're getting the PS6 according to Microsoft lawyers. But let's say in 5 years' time, the PS6 comes out. Loads of people buy the PS6 because they're PlayStation people, right? And then Microsoft take Call of Duty away from PlayStation players. So they'll have to buy another console to play Call of Duty. If you think about worldwide, that is just going to make a lot of people angry rather than actually getting them engaged. It just doesn't. Yeah.
I would like to think that they would see how that would massively backfire on them if they did it. I don't know if I have the confidence in their ability to actually be able to see that, because they would probably think of it from a perspective of, if everyone buys a PS6 when it comes out, and then we make Call of Duty just before, like they've all bought the console, and then they make Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox. Now they can't play one of their favorite games, although I'm not sure how many people think Call of Duty is their favorite game at the moment. But that's a different conversation. But like, if it's like they can't play their favorite game or what they bought it for, being excited for like a new Call of Duty release or whatever, and now they can only play it on PC or Xbox, then their thinking is probably like, that will really hurt PlayStation
rather than the gamers.
Rather than the gamers. Because they seem to be, how do I get an advantage? But what they don't see is gamers could potentially, like in some small or larger sort of portion of the community, like boycott Xbox off the back of that, because they just like, do you know what? I've had enough of this now. This is the last straw. Unless what they do in between, if they plan to ever do that, is like phenomenal to the point where people just forgive them easily. But then if they're not thinking about gamers first now, then what they're doing in the next 10 years is probably not going to be that phenomenal. Maybe by accident, and maybe by buying other companies, and maybe, you know, in dribs and drabs. But yeah, I'm not sure that they have the ability to see the potential of the backfire if they were to do that.
I just like
Before you start, Aaron, do you want to address some of the comments that have come in?
I mean, I can if you want. Okay, so Jasmine Manan, the cretin herself, says, just joined. Nice to see Aaron is on an infamous rant as always. Yeah. You missed it. I think I went for like 10 minutes straight earlier at the beginning of this stream. You should have been here. Scott does make a good point. He says, like the Minecraft franchise is on other platforms. So he's talking about like Legends and I can't remember what the other one was.
Dungeons.
But then again,
There
like
wouldn't be any
Minecraft-
sense in making part of the franchise exclusive, though, surely.
This is what I'm saying. Connor O'Neill says Aaron should tweet Phil for a fight. Winner takes Activision. I'm going to blow your mind here, Connor O'Neill, but I was actually stood next to Phil Spencer at a bar less than 2 weeks ago. So if I wanted to fight the man, it probably would have happened already. Look, he's saying exactly what he needs to say in order to get the best
Phil,
outcome for Xbox.
Do you want to fight outside?
Phil? Nah, mate, nah. It wouldn't go down like that. Let me tell you. Be like, Phil, let's get some cider on the go. Let's see what happens.
Phil, where are your games, mate? Where are your games?
Honestly, had they, yeah,
In the bakery.
The ironic thing is that Xbox were like very nice to me whilst out there. Like PlayStation did have no pro presence.
You know what I'd love? You just go up to him and go, like, no context, like, Phil, where's the bread? Where's the
Where is
bread?
the bread?
Phil, why
Where's
are
the
you trying
bread?
so hard to be Greg's? What's going on?
Yeah.
Just get some flour, get the yeast, get the water.
Yeah.
It's simple, mate.
Phil,
just
Why
pop it
can't
in.
you get a game out? Where's Gear 6? Where's
yeah.
Hellblade 2?
Where is Gear 6? Where is Gear 6?
No, why wasn't it shown at the showcase? But it wasn't.
Where's the soft, crusty tiger loaf?
Exactly. That's what that is. Sorry, carry on, Aaron.
Jasmine says, gonna get Judge Aaron Xbox Game Pass for Christmas so I can get a lecture in return. I mean, I'll happily oblige about that. If you want. All right, so let's give the comments a break now. But like, the sad thing is that the next important phase, like I think it was, we've talked about this already, like PlayStation and Xbox right now, they're already thinking about PlayStation 6 and the next Xbox.
Oh, yeah.
Because the rate that these games take to make, like 5 or 6 years, if the next consoles are really coming out in 2028, then that's where the next battleground will be fought. And
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure that Xbox are going to have a console to sell to people. I think their plan is let's get Game Pass on everything we can. TV wise, or let's make the next Xbox like a little stick that people can like click into their TVs. I know I'm going a bit like, you know, Galaxy.
We've already
brain
seen
here.
that cloud device, though, haven't we, on Phil Spencer's desk and on the, you know,
This is the
backdrop and
thing.
everything.
And like going back earlier, like so on this channel, my preview impressions for Forza Motorsport are there, and I say in that video that only now are we seeing the full effects of what the quote world's most powerful console potential actually can amount to.
Yeah.
But like I said, we're four years into this thing, and only now are we seeing the fruition where PlayStation 5, we haven't even seen the full potential of PlayStation 5 yet, but PlayStation still managed to deliver, you know, cross-platform games like God of War, and it's, yeah, so, yeah, I don't know where I was really going with that one, but it's
I
just
enjoyed
something
it.
to think about.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, I do a good
I
job
enjoyed
at
it.
sounding like I know what I'm talking about half the time. I might not, though.
No. But
I
Jim
still need to learn that skill.
Jim Ryan was interesting. He gave a bit of testimony yesterday, the PlayStation boss, Jim Ryan. He gave some testimony, really interesting things. Most of it was redacted, which is annoying. But the bits that they did show were very, very interesting. So he says that Sony won't give dev kits to Activision if the acquisition goes through, because it could release some of Sony's secrets to Microsoft. So they wouldn't do that. He also said that he expected Redfall and Starfield to come out on PlayStation prior to Microsoft's acquisition of ZeniMax. So that was a bit of a surprise. But then he said that it's not anti-competitive. He sort of took that on the chin, sort of thing. He also said that he got an email. Xbox's original proposal to keep Call of Duty and Activision games on PlayStation was not meaningful. Key titles were missing. For example, his offer included Overwatch, but not Overwatch 2. The deal was not negotiated. Spencer sent it to Ryan via email, and Ryan rejected it without a counter proposal. How spicy is that? Just the two heavyweights just in an email chain. I'd just love to see that. It was redacted, of course. He also said in an email with the former PlayStation boss, Ryan said he believed the Activision's the acquisition of Activision was not a play for Xbox exclusivity, but rather for King's suite of mobile titles, which is really interesting. I think that is interesting. And then the last thing he talked about as well, he says that an email from Phil Spencer last August set the alarm bells ringing at Sony. but the contents of the email were not shared to the court. So that just this is just give me more. I just want more. We still haven't heard from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. We haven't heard from Bobby Kotick of Activision, who is also due to give evidence, and Nvidia's SVP Jeff Fisher is also set to give evidence as well. But how has Jim Ryan come off, do you think, over the last few days?
I think he's playing the hand he needs to in terms of like, I was shocked this happened, but so he says two things which you reiterated there, Nathan. He said that he was shocked to not see Redfield. Well, prior to the acquisition, Redfield and Starfield were expected to come to PlayStation, but that Starfield being taken off wasn't anti-competitive. And obviously, the reason that he's saying that is because he doesn't want to say to the FTC, he doesn't want the FTC to say to him, "Well, what's the difference between you taking Final Fantasy 16 off the board compared to Starfield
that just released?"
Yeah. But the difference is that we didn't have to buy the entirety of Square Enix about it. What he should be saying, if that did come up, is exactly what I said earlier in the podcast. We didn't have to buy an entire publisher and take it off the board, and we've built up, good favor with the PlayStation audience or the gamer audience. That Square Enix, someone like Square Enix, is willing to put it thing, whereas Xbox can't claim that. So again, he's walking a very thin tightrope, and it's interesting because Phil Spencer is a gamer. Like, you can tell that he plays games, which is why
you can tell by his drip.
Yeah, you can tell by his drip.
His lack of drip.
His leather jacket game is close to Todd Howard's. Whereas Jim Ryan, he's not a gamer. Like, he doesn't play games. Like, I think he said once, like, who wants to play the original Gran Turismo on like PlayStation 5, and then all the PlayStation gamers were like about backwards compatibility. They were like in uproar and stuff.
All the pitchforks.
All the pitchforks, all the DualShock 4 controllers were up in arms, like, we want it. So, like, for the most part, that's why I'm kind of surprised with how well he's handled the deposition here at the moment. Considering how much of a little toe rag he was, and I'll admit this, going around to all the different regulators trying to stop this deal. It's interesting to see, had that not happened, whether or not the FTC would be taking Microsoft to court right now. Well, I guess we'll never know.
His spiciest thing was that he called Xbox Game Pass value destructive, and claims that he's spoken to all the publishers. That was his quote. I've spoken to all the publishers.
Are you a publisher? Yeah, we published this one game in 2015. Well, I want to speak to you.
So his quote was, "I've spoken to all of the publishers, and they don't like Game Pass."
I believe it.
So.
None of them will ever say it.
Do you believe it?
That's hard. Like, that's something to say from the competitor. Like, it's like, oh, don't worry, I've spoken to these people and they don't like it, but trust me, don't ask them, just trust me, they don't like it. Like, that's what that feels like, is like just a way to like sort of dig something. And there's a lot of it that feels hyper petty. Like, rather than just trying to get to the root cause of the problem. Like, it feels like there's a far better angle to sort of sell as to why they shouldn't do it than just, I've spoken to all the publishers, they don't like it. Like, trust me, it's kind of, I kind of find that like that sort of approach, like, just not.
I've got the quote here. I've got it. So he's talked to all the publishers, and they unanimously do not like Game Pass because it is value destructive. He also claimed that Microsoft is losing a lot of money from the service. What else did he talk about? It was a pre-recorded. Publishers just aren't big fans of the model at all. Do you believe that, Aaron?
Yeah, I believe it. Like, to be honest, I'm quite shocked that like a lot of the major publishers are still supporting Game Pass by making these deals where they could sell the game like elsewhere. Like, and Jasmine brings up Diablo 4 in the chat, and I think that's a perfect example, because when this deal got announced, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, great! I don't have to pay £70 for Diablo 4 because it'll be on Xbox Game Pass." Whereas I feel like Activision behind the scenes are thinking, oh, thank God it's not happening because we actually get to sell. Like, look how well Diablo 4 sold, and all that money we wouldn't have made had it gone straight to Game Pass. Like, yeah, there's a greater install base on PlayStation and PC than there is on Xbox at the moment. But even on the PC side, like, it would have gone straight to PC Game Pass, and that's money that Activision has made. That's all you need to say to the FTC, or evidence for why it's value destructive. That's why it's so easy for me to believe that Xbox Game Pass doesn't work, and that's why you're seeing like EA having to put their own services bolted onto Xbox Game Pass, and Ubisoft. I think it's called Ubisoft Connect and EA Play are adding subscriptions that you can put on Game Pass, just so at least these publishers are making a little bit of money. And even then, they're not doing the same thing as Xbox. Like, new games day one don't go to Game Pass. Can you imagine if EA Sports FC or FIFA 23 before it went to Game Pass on day one? How much money EA would lose? Like, yeah, they'd probably make a lot of money from the in-game, like, foot points and things like that or whatever, but just purely on an in. They want
most of the money just come from that, but there's a lot of money that comes from the purchase at the end. Yeah,
it's free money. And if I was the FTC right now and I was looking for proof from these publishers, to address Matt's point, so I'm the FTC. Jim Ryan's just said that. I'd be like, well, how do we know for sure that the publishers, that they don't like it? Then I'd be saying to Xbox, all right, because this is not public information. We still don't know what the deal with Xbox Game Pass is. How much money exchanges hands when a game wants to go on Game Pass.
Good point,
and how much money is made thereafter. Xbox doesn't discuss it. Those are the emails and the facts that I would like to see be brought up in court, and then we'll know for sure whether or not Xbox Game Pass makes money. But spoiler alert, we know Xbox Game Pass doesn't make money, because guess what? Netflix is having trouble making money right now. And how many millions of subscribers have they got? You know?
Yeah. I'm just going to go through the comments, Matt.
There's a slight difference. Just before you do,
Tell me,
there's a slight difference with the Netflix analogy, because Netflix are a movie studio and they keep putting out, as you're saying Xbox do, they keep putting out terrible content. And people aren't as interested. Whereas you've got other platforms that now have the same model as them in terms of streaming, where they are putting out good content. Even like things like Paramount Plus and
Disney
like
Plus,
Apple,
Amazon,
and Disney, like they're all putting out great content,
all
and
losing
Netflix
money.
is not. So
Disney Plus is losing money. Disney have said that Disney Plus is losing money.
Yeah.
All losing money because basically it was floated on the stock market. Netflix didn't reveal their numbers or how much money they're making. And everyone on the stock market were like, oh, Netflix is the biggest thing. It's the next best thing in entertainment. Then their stock prices started falling. And as a result, it's been this after effect. So like that's why you're seeing like Disney Plus. It used to have like exclusive content, like films. Pixar films in particular would go straight there day one. But then it's like, well, why did we just do that? Because the subscribers we gain from putting that movie on Disney Plus day one, that doesn't equate to the money we'd make than if we were to put it in cinemas. And I find it incredible that Netflix are still refusing to put their movies, because movies that you put out in cinemas, they have a lot more cachet. They are the ones that tend to perform better on streaming services. That's why I applaud Nintendo and PlayStation. We haven't talked a lot about Nintendo in comparison, but they have come up a couple times.
We will, don't we?
That's why I applaud them for not falling into Xbox's game, because guess what? They want to make money. And Xbox isn't in the business of making money. They're in the business of building subscriptions.
Looking like the biggest gaming company.
That's the thing. I don't know why Xbox is still even a thing when we have discussions like this, guys. I really don't.
We've got some great comments. I'm going to go through a few of them. Connor's got some inside info, guys. Are you ready for this? My uncle works at Nintendo, and they said publishers love Game Pass. Get your uncle on the podcast, Connor. Let me know if he wants to come on and discuss it. That's brilliant. Also, Gigi's in the chat as well. Hi, Gigi. Thanks so much for joining in. They say 2028 is too early in regards to the console generations. I don't think they're abandoning hardware just yet in regards to what you said about Xbox. It's interesting to see where they're going to go as well. And Lewis, thanks Lewis for tuning in. Of course, Nathan knows how to make a loaf of bread. It's been an ongoing joke in the group chat because I've just bought a bread maker and I'm enjoying it very much. So that's why I used that analogy.
You didn't pay 69 billion for it though, I can assure you.
I didn't. I want to make my own bread, you know? I want to make my own bread. I'm a proper gamer. And then Jasmine as well also makes a good point. She says that she's hesitant to buy games now since getting Game Pass. Makes me think about it way more, because if you just buy Game Pass and don't buy any games, how are the publishers making money? Like Aaron said, we don't know how much money they're making through it because it's all very hush hush. But yeah, talking about Nintendo, we haven't spoke about them a lot, but a long time was spent on the first day, I believe, because the FTC's lawyers were arguing that Nintendo is a direct competitor with Microsoft, and Microsoft were arguing that they're not. And Jim Ryan also said that as well, that Nintendo Switch is not Sony's direct competitor as well. He talked about, like, there's a big difference between people that play Call of Duty and a big difference to people that play Mario and Zelda, I think was his exact quote. Is it a competitor? Do we agree? Or is this just Jim Ryan and Phil Spencer getting on the same hymn sheet?
I think Nintendo have done a really good job of making Nintendo their own thing. Like, I don't think they're a competitor. Like, Nintendo games are so different to other games, and for the most part. I mean, I don't like. Again, I'm a gaming fan. I play Call of Duty. Play a bunch of other ones. Recently F1 23 and
NBA 2K.
NBA 2K. Yeah, like I like games like that, right? I like first person shooters and
Last of Us,
sports games, and a few story games. Whereas I don't have much want to ever play a Nintendo game because I'm not really into that type of game.
It's a very different type of game, isn't it?
Yeah. However, like I don't see Nintendo as a competitor. I see Nintendo as like a second console, or maybe it's your first, but like a second console you'd have with your Xbox or PlayStation. It's not like something you would have instead of. Like that's kind of how I see Nintendo.
Yeah, Jasmine is in the chat. She is also not a Nintendo fan. She just does not get it. Like, we watched when we watched in the direct, and we talked about it in the walkthrough as well. Just doesn't get it. Just doesn't get the Zelda hype, and that's fine. There's a very different audience. Aaron, you've got all the consoles. What do you think?
That reminded me of that episode of the IT Crowd. You've got all the consoles. Why'd you have all the consoles? Well, I'd hate it if a game came out on another console and I couldn't play it. Don't you think? I do think. There you go. That's basically summed up the entire.
Literally what we're talking about.
Yeah, literally. Jasmine says, yeah, she does have a Nintendo Switch. Like, here's the thing. They're not a competitor. On paper, they probably are, but Nintendo have done such a good job at differentiating themselves compared to PlayStation and Xbox. Honestly, if you were Nintendo right now, you are sitting pretty, my friend. Because not only do you have placed... Oh, mate. Miyamoto's at the top of that money pile and laughing down at everybody else. He's like, we just released Zelda. Is it basically a glorified expansion to a game we made like 5 years ago? Hell yes, it is. But guess what? We're going to charge $10 more for it. 7 years ago. We're going to charge $10 more for it. And it's going to sell even better than the first one in less time. How have they done that? Because they continue to release great games. I keep harping on about this drum.
That people want to wait that long for. That's the thing.
People want to play. But also with Nintendo, it's the quality as well. A game comes out for Nintendo and you're guaranteed it's going to work. And everybody makes fun of Nintendo.
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. Everybody makes fun of Nintendo because, like, they're not competing on the graphics game. And I'm of the belief that this is where, granted, gaming's part of the tech industry and you always want to push for the newest, latest, best. But I believe, like, this constant push for, like, realistic graphics, that's kind of what's hurting gaming right now, because you're asking more of developers and you know, you're constantly pushing these consoles on the merit of how powerful and graphically intensive and capable they are. Whereas in reality, these games take longer to make. That's probably why Xbox is having difficulty. That's why PlayStation is only getting out one proper first-party game release this year. Whereas Nintendo, I mean, I can't remember what that chip was that it's still running on, that mobile phone chip. That's like a joke, and that iPhones have got more. But guess what?
It was old when it was released, but let's put it that way. Yeah.
But guess what? The games are coming out for it, and I bet that means that that's the reason why they're able to get games out at a much faster rate. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, Nintendo. What was once seen as a hindrance for Nintendo, aka the graphics aren't as good, has ended up being a major boon for them. And when you couple the fact that the whole hybrid nature of the console differentiate even more, it's you're sitting pretty. Everyone's like, where's Switch 2? Where's Switch 2? Guess what? If Nintendo had it their way, they would never release a Switch 2.
Yeah.
Because the current one gets sell.
That's kind of like, it could potentially be the beginning of the downfall if they release a console that can handle better graphics, and then people start demanding that, because their games do not suit that.
They don't require it.
They've not been
sucked in.
suit
it. They don't. It doesn't. They're not required. Like, I think Zelda. Like, although I do want to play Zelda, but I just don't want to spend money on a Switch and the game. Like, that's really all it comes down to. If someone gave it to me, I'd be sat playing it tonight. Like, but hint, if anybody's in
Nintendo, if you're watching,
my address is
Connor, get your uncle to send Matt a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, Connor. But like, I think the games are great, but it's just not. Most of them aren't for me. Some of them look fun, like they would be fun for 10 minutes or so, and then
you don't want to play the Pigeon Battle Royale,
mate. I want to play it, but I don't think it's going to be like my go-to first game that I'm going to be playing for 10,000 hours in a year. Like, it would be something I'd play for 20 minutes, think it's funny, and then put it down and then go and have dinner. Like, that's the difference. And I think if they were to bring out a console that could handle better graphics, it could be shooting them in the foot. So they've got to be really careful around the console, product sort of area of their business, because right now they've got something where if they look at Zelda, it's like pushing probably the capabilities of what they can achieve. And all they really want or need really is something that's exactly like the Switch, that can just handle maybe a few more frames, but it doesn't actually need it. Like, it just would be a nice to have for going forwards in the future. But but graphically, I don't think, maybe I just don't see it as a necessity, because they are so different.
Yeah.
And like Aaron said, it's become their strength.
It's a philosophy. It's a whole different philosophy. It's like we're not concentrating on the quality of the graphics. We're launching a console that has the graphical power of a mobile phone and that's got an old chip in it, but we're making it at this price point, which is below what our competitors are at, because we're going to give you great games. Yeah, they might not be 4K resolution with ray tracing, but they're great experiences, and you'll buy them and you'll enjoy them, and we'll put a real work into it. It's a whole different philosophy. And as I just don't think, we watched in the direct, and Jasmine and Scott had a very, very funny sort of going between them.
Healthy debate.
Healthy debate. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. On last week's show, where she was essentially saying that she doesn't want to play them because they don't look great, and that's fine, but that's an Nintendo's philosophy that they're not bothered about. It's about the experience, and that's where it matters. So they haven't been drawn in either. When they saw the Series X and the PS5 come out, they weren't drawn into, should we get a Switch 2 and more power, or should we do? No, they just stuck to their own.
Yeah, because when all of that was happening, there was like a bit of speculation. Yeah. Will they bring it out? Will they bring something out? Will they join in with like what's their next console? And then they just didn't, and it was like. Looking back now, at the time, it's like, oh, come on, guys. But right now, I'm impressed that they made that decision. Yeah,
they released the OLED. I think that was a surprise when there was an OLED there was nothing else different with it, just the OLED. But
the OLED ended up being a clever a release in the end, because it does make your games look better, but not at the cost of overworking your developers more. It's just slap an extra screen on it, will charge
helps
you
everyone.
More.
Yeah,
but I do believe, similar to that vein, that were it not for the pandemic lockdown and the lockdown situation, that it's been speculated that the OLED was going to support 4K output on TVs, and it does have that capabilities in it, and the dev kits are right there. They could still do that and maybe call it Switch 2 or something like that. But I just want to say, Connor says, I think the games do look good. And that's the point, though. It's like their philosophy is art style over graphics. Do you know what I mean?
The games, I'm not saying they look bad. I'm just saying that they're graphically, if we're talking about purely graphically, if you compared Elden Ring on the highest settings,
not as capable.
No, but what Nintendo have got in their back pocket is literally that, in that they've got such a smaller screen. But people,
it's like,
you're not going to notice it as much because it's a handheld device. You sort of expect it to look like that, and when games look good, then
it's kind of like comparing a backpack to a suitcase. Like they're both for completely different things. and it's the same. And I just want to point out, Jasmine has said Matt's not getting my second Switch, and I think it would be only a fair trade-off that she's had my PS5 for like the best part of the year.
It sounds like the deal's already been done in the chat, Matt, because so Jasmine, this was her first comment. I have 2 Nintendo Switches actually, flexing. Got it for Animal Crossing and Pokemon.
But she
so
doesn't
you've got
like any Nintendo games.
Yeah. You've got 1 Switch for Animal Crossing, 1 Switch for Pokemon, right? And then Connor in the chat, thank you so much, Connor, for brokering this. Jasmine is right here, guys. Jasmine, why am I being called out? Found a home for your second Switch. There you go. Yeah. Matt's not getting my second Switch. I need 1 for upstairs and 1 for downstairs.
Which is fair. I do think that's fair.
Yeah.
They're cheap enough. So
yeah. So I think that deal's already been done in the chat, and I'll leave you to go and do that. And Gigi's in the chat as well. Nintendo's starting off making playing cards, and they're over 130 years old. They know what to focus on and what's a waste of time. This goes back to what we said at the very start with Microsoft. They don't have that sort of ingrained philosophy of a company that like, okay, we know this is our bread and butter. We're making these type of games. We're going to focus on this type of game. We're going to push it to the limit, and we're going to do it like this. Have a sort of philosophy. They're just so everywhere. Whereas PlayStation and Nintendo have got this sort of philosophy where they're sticking to a strategy of this is what we're doing. And Xbox is just like, oh, we need to buy Bethesda. We need to buy Activision. It's just all over the place. So yeah, great comment, Gigi, as well. I've also got Jasmine. I'm being publicly called out by my own team. I can't believe this. Well, you did say you got 2 Nintendo Switches, which is probably 1 too many.
After saying you didn't like Nintendo games.
Yeah, exactly. It's all adding up. Yeah.
I also have 2 Nintendo Switches in my apartment at the moment for reasons that I can't go into.
Right.
But I've ended up with an extra one, not by my choosing, people.
I know why.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, we know why. Sorry
to tease everybody.
That's all right.
I've got no Nintendo Switches. I just want to throw that
just to
out
confirm. Yeah, just on while we're on the subject of handheld. Sony have announced the Project Q device, which is essentially a streaming device, which I think is very clever, actually, from what we've discussed today. And I know that Jasmine's not a fan of it as well, because she's more about that sort of dedicated handheld, like more of like the Steam Deck and Asus ROG Ally that can actually run the games natively. But I think what's so impressive about the Project Q is that they've seen what's happening with the Switch, and they're like, okay, we'll have a bit of that, please. It will stream your games from your PlayStation 5 to the Project Q, and it is essentially a PlayStation controller with a screen on it. That's all it is, right? Microsoft lawyers think they know how much it'll be. So they've already... I don't know if you're laughing at me or
no, I'm just
what's in the comments.
Just the way they say it, like, we know how much that's going to be. Like, no, you don't. Similar to the Jim Ryan, I've spoken to publishers of like, at least then he said he actually spoke to them.
Yeah.
Microsoft lawyers, they're not knocking on PlayStation's door and going, "Can you mind telling us how much Project Q is going to cost?"
Yeah, so they've guesstimated it will be under $300, which, I mean, I don't know if it will actually.
I think my guess
my
guess is it will be 289.
289.
That's my guess.
Okay.
That's still priced me out of ever buying one.
Well, that's not 300. That's not 300 under $300, because $300 is £237.
So I think it will be like $350 or something like that. $340.
There's no way it's 230 quid. There is no way it's 230.
No.
I'm hearing all this. And do you remember when I said I wouldn't pay more than like 60 quid for it, Nathan? Because I genuinely believe that's how much it's worth. Like, honestly, like, it doesn't run games natively. I can't take it out of my house. What are you granting me?
Yeah, I don't know what it's for, to be honest. Like, other than playing games in bed and on the toilet. Like, that's
how much.
What does that do that my phone can't do now? I'll tell you what it does. It gives you haptic feedback, and that's not worth 200 quid extra, as far as I'm concerned. Especially when you can buy a PS5 DualSense controller for around 69 quid.
Yeah. Like, really fully utilize that haptic feedback at the moment.
Exactly.
Just let us know in the comments what how much you think Project Q will be. We've got some chats in there. Connor said, "Isn't it rumored to be $300?" It's going to be under, apparently, according to Microsoft. Jasmine says, "My prediction is $249.99. That is £196. That is isn't that the same price as the DualSense Pro controller?
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way.
259, isn't it? The DualSense Pro.
I'm calling that. No, there's no way with a controller and a screen in it for the same price as a Pro controller. DualSense, what is it called? The DualSense Edge. DualSense Edge. How much is the DualSense Edge? £209.99. So it would be £10. So it would be £10 less than the Pro PS5 controller.
Why are you, Nathan? Why are you talking like this as if it's unrealistic? The dual, like, it's not. Like, it's a glorified controller, and it doesn't even have the enhancements of the DualSense.
No, but
Edge.
my point is that the PSVR 2 is more than the PlayStation 5. The accessory is more than. So I think they're going to price it in such a high bracket that they know that people are just going to buy it because it looks cool.
The difference with the VR2 is it is integral to an experience. Yes, it's like you could class it as the accessory, but you could also class it as the main thing you need. Like, even though you need the PlayStation as well,
it's transformative. The PSVR,
yeah, it transforms the whole experience, and it's VR. It's completely different to just comparing it to a screen with a controller attached to each side. I think.
How well is the Logitech G selling?
Jasmine, are you in the chat?
Out,
just to clarify, I don't know actually. We'll have to get Jasmine in the chat. Yeah. So Jasmine says, I think Project Cool will cost $249 in both dollars. Oh right, okay. I'm with you. Sorry, I've got a GG as well. Come on. Okay, sorry guys. $249.99 in pounds and dollars as well.
Right, the Logitech G console.
G Cloud, yeah.
G Cloud, sorry. It's available now, as far as I can tell, because you can buy it on Currys. It's £329, and they're having a laugh with that.
It's more. It's going to be more than that. It's going to be more than that.
What the
it's going to be
Project
more than
Q
that.
is?
If Project Q ends up being anything like £429 or £49, if it's like £449, I'm like, come
GG
on,
does get it. Why aren't they just making PlayStation Vita 2? Because that is what PSVR 2 is more closer to the equivalent of.
Yeah.
And, like,
where do we think it should be priced?
Like £89.
I agree
Really?
with Matt there. I agree with Matt. Anything
Slightly
over
more than
100
a
is
normal
joke.
controller.
If you could take it outside of your house and play things natively on it,
yeah,
£300.
This thing is going to crash and burn.
But if it's literally something I can't take out of my house and I have to that's the only thing I can do is like play it in bed or like in the garden or like on the toilet or whatever.
Jasmine, you might as well jump on the stream.
What is that for?
Just to remind everyone, you can get a Steam Deck for £350 with a 64 gig hard drive, and you can put an SD card in it,
which runs
games
reasonable.
Natively
But
very well.
I think, but I mean, PlayStation have a history of overpricing their stuff.
That's my point. Yeah, that's my point.
So like, if it ends up being if it's more than £400, it's an absolute joke.
If it's more than 200, is a joke.
In my opinion. I think if it's
Microsoft thinks it's £250. So
I know. What do they know?
If it's more than £200, it's still a bit of a joke. But I think people would buy it. Like, but if
that's
it's
the thing, yeah.
But if it were £89, like £99, like I think, okay, yeah, I can see why that would elevate your experience.
I will eat some squirty cheese on stream if it's the walkthrough following the announcement of the price. If it's under £100, I will just eat. I hate cheese, as you know. I will eat squirty cheese on the street. There is
I
no
want a full
way.
block of cheddar.
Okay, I'll do that. Whatever. I'm so confident it won't be under £100. There's no way in the world.
Full block of cheddar.
There is no way in the world.
In my head, if it's above the price of a Nintendo Switch, PlayStation hasn't got a leg to stand on. Do you know what I mean? Because the Nintendo Switch has an OLED screen, and it's got Joy-Con controls with HD Rumble compatibility, which is made by the same company that are responsible for the DualSense's haptic feedback. But guess what? It can run games natively.
Yeah, just to clarify, so just looking at the specs of the of Project Q.
What specs? There's nothing in it.
No, just the screen. The screen is 1080p, 60 FPS, 60 hertz. Sorry, 1080p, 60 hertz screen, which is 30 30 hertz more than the Nintendo Switch might add, as well, and it's got Wi-Fi. That's about it.
My phone does that.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've
But
got and you've got things out there like backbones and stuff like
yeah
that you can attach to them, and it's pretty much the same thing.
Which is what I use. It's not backbone, but something else. Yeah.
We've got Baker Cookie in the chat who wants us to decide between Play or Xbox. They've said it 3 times now. Should we vote? Play or Xbox?
What? Console wise?
Yeah.
Well, if you want
vote.
games to be can play right now, PlayStation it has to be.
Yeah, agreed.
Surely.
Matt?
Yeah, probably go PlayStation
Cool.
at the moment.
There's your answer, Baker Cookie.
And then there's just cheese chat as far as the eye can see now. Cheese.
Yeah, I know. Jasmine said Juleson's Edge was 209. It won't be less than that. I agree. Absolutely agree.
Do you know what? I agree with you, but it's ridiculous that I feel the need.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it won't be. Because it's Sony. But they've got a history for this.
Can I just we've got a decent amount of people in the chat. All right, if Project Q, Nathan's just read you the spec. If it's priced at over £200, if it's say 209, would you purchase it? I'll pop your answer in the chat.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to do a poll.
Can we run a poll? Yeah,
I'm going to do a poll.
My answer
Project
is
Q.
no.
At what price? 250 quid.
Let's just say 200 quid. Even
200 quid. 200.
Yeah.
Are you copying?
Because I want to know who these people are. These
there we
whales.
go.
Do you know what I mean?
I've just put that in the chat, guys. Project Q at £200. Are you copying? Yes or no? Please let us know.
Are you copying?
What you think in the comments.
Buy it.
You don't buy it?
I'm not buying it.
You're not buying it? No.
Let's just have a quick look at Project Q. Just if there's anyone who's out there who doesn't know what it looks like, I just want to show them what it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were something that was native, and you could play games on it and stuff, I kind of like the approach of giving you a full controller, because that's one of the problems that I've always sort of felt about handhelds is just being comfortable with the controller. But and I know that's come a long way. So I think this actually looks as far as a handheld console is concerned, if it were that a standalone, I wouldn't be that disappointed. I would be way more interested in buying it, because I'd like the idea that I've got a full controller.
But this ties into what we were saying earlier. The reason Nintendo Switch can do this with their games is because they're not graphically intensive. Whereas if it was to run God of War Ragnarok natively on it, it want to take off or blow up in your hands.
I'm saying if it looked like this was a native handheld and it worked, it's not all things considered, if this was out there to compete with especially if it was out there to compete with stuff like the Switch or the ROG Ally or something like that, Steam Deck, I'd be interested in this. I'd take a look at it, but because it's literally just something you can carry around your house, I just don't see the value in it.
Even me, who primarily plays their Switch in their house in handheld, I'm not willing to pay more than over 100 for it. And I think that says a lot. Because at least I know with Nintendo Switch, it sounds daft, but the option's there. I have done it. I don't do it a lot, but
and we know. Look, just to be frank, Valve are losing money on Steam Decks, or they're at least just about breaking even on Steam Decks, because they can afford to do it because they make money through Steam.
But every console is sold at a loss, when it first
launches. But Asus, who are a huge manufacturer of PC products, they've done their best to compete with the Steam Deck, and their handheld is $699 for something that can run games natively, and even then, no matter what Jasmine said, it's not perfect. It's got issues, right?
Can you imagine if the Steam Deck was running on Windows as opposed to Linux? They'd never do it, but
they'd never do it. So my point is, if Sony decided to do it, it would be priced at 800 quid, which is going to be more than the PlayStation 5. So have they looked at that and thought, you know what, we probably can't make one for the same price as the PlayStation 5. So what's the point? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Would you buy that over a PlayStation 5?
No.
There you go.
Unless it docked, and then it becomes a PlayStation 5 ostensibly.
But then, I mean, that's
But it's not gonna be-
a massive undertaking to fit a PlayStation 5 into something that big.
Exactly. Jasmine said, I'm the first person to had issues, but still prefer the Steam Deck. Steam Deck on Windows would be my dream handheld. There you go. But so my point is, if PlayStation did a handheld that was native that ran Windows, that would be an interesting conversation with Microsoft, by the way.
I mean,
Jim Ryan phoning Phil Spencer. Yeah,
I don't think it would even need to run Windows. I just think it would need to be a handheld native PlayStation.
Will it have to run
controller.
some OS? They'd have to make some.
Yeah,
OS
like.
But the appeal with Windows is that it can run Game Pass, Steam, like the whole lot, basically. Whereas the Steam Deck can only run Steam, like unless you do some really tough workarounds.
Yeah. But the other thing is as well, Microsoft thinks the PS5 Slim will be $399, so at the same price as the non-disc version. So the PS5 Slim normally takes over from the PlayStation 5, doesn't it? At a certain point. What do we think they're right? Do you think that's how much a PS5 Slim will be?
That does feel incredibly
$399.
But
you could get a Project Q for £100 less.
I'm just trying to think relatively like what a PS4
How's that poll doing?
Like PS4 Slim was compared around the same sort of time, like when the Slim was released. How much was it?
PS4 price,
like the Slim
RRP
price when it came out.
Oh, the PS4 Slim price
when it first came out. Yeah, because I would like to
$399.
Cheap.
It was $399.
So they're saying it's going to be the same price, forgetting about inflation and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I'd say it's more likely to be like $449.
Well, the normal PlayStation 5 is $479 now.
Well, I don't know, maybe $389 then. Like, I don't think it would be as cheap as what they're saying.
I don't think Microsoft knows anything.
I think they've literally they've asked the people that have no idea about they've never looked at PlayStation pricing in their life, and they've just asked them to guess.
Sorry, Aaron. I'm just going to go a few more comments because we have been going for an hour and a half, so we will end soon. I will go through the chat poll as well. Jasmine says, I wouldn't cop it if they were handing out for free. Gigi says it's a rip-off. Adam L, no. Connor, no. Connor, like, it's just a screen. Yeah, absolutely. A brick Switch has more value. Ooh. Yeah. If Slim is cheaper and they do a cheaper Slim discless, then what is the point of Project Q? Because it's handheld.
Because you can play it on the toilet.
Exactly. So the poll, drum roll, please.
I have no idea what this poll's going to be.
There's been 8 votes. What do we think?
I mean, I'm on the. It's 50-50 in it. It's got to
be. I'm hoping in my heart that everyone said no.
I would think it's 100% against it. Like, nobody would buy it.
That is exactly right. 100% of the votes said no. So 8 people have said that they would not buy the Project Q at £200.
£200, mind. And in Microsoft's guess, it's going to be
£300 more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're making a loss on that one, I think.
Yeah. There is so much we haven't talked about today, guys. There's things like Bobby Kotick forced Microsoft to give Activision higher revenue share to keep Call of Duty on Xbox. The fact that Elder Scrolls 6 is 5+ years away. Boo. The fact that Microsoft tried to buy Zynga before it was acquired by Sony. Sony bought Zynga, didn't they, eventually?
Oh, did they? I don't think it was.
Was it not Sony? Someone else bought Zynga anyway. Microsoft also admitted that Xbox has lost the console wars as well, which is quite funny.
Take-Two bought Zynga.
Take-Two, of course. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, there's so much we haven't spoken about. The fact that also they think that the next Xbox and PlayStation 6 is coming out in 2028, so it gives us only 5 years for the next one.
Can I just say, like, with that first point you led with, the Kotick thing, like, we're not putting it on COD on Xbox unless you buy a higher revenue share. I know Kotick, I've got some strong words about him, and he's not a very nice person, to put it very lightly. But, like, even then, Phil Spencer, he's like, why don't people want to put their games on Xbox? Like, why does this keep happening? Shouldn't you be asking yourself that? Oh,
surely it'd be the other way around, where they're like, please please, can we have your games on Xbox? Like, please. And then it's just the opposite.
Well, no, because Kotick's
Yeah.
probably like, well, we make enough money on PlayStation and PC.
Yeah.
We don't really need it on Xbox. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
you
but
have lost
the
console wars.
Yeah, the
just
trial
gotta-
continues. Anyway, there'll be more stuff that come out. We haven't even heard from Kotick yet, which will be very interesting. There's also the Microsoft CEO as well. That'll be interesting, and a couple of SVPs from Nvidia as well.
Can I just say, I'm seeing stuff in the chat. I've got nothing against Phil Spencer personally. I just don't think you can trust him as far as you can throw him. All
There
right.
you go. There you go. Phil, if
you
you're
go.
watching, where are the games?
Where's the bread?
Where
Phil?
are the games?
Where's the bread?
Where's
The oven's empty.
And on that note, shall we close the bread cycle?
Let's
that
close
was
the bakery.
Let's.
Yeah.
I
Shut it
can't
all
think of
down.
it. Let's turn off the bread maker. Thank you so much, guys. It's been such a pleasure to spend an hour and a half with you. It's absolutely flown by. We've talked about so much regards to the FCC trial. Thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in as well. All your chat messages, we really appreciate it. Thanks for being involved, and thanks for voting in our poll as well for Project Q. That will certainly be interesting when it comes out. Thank you also to my good friends and colleagues Matt and Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us on the pod today. Hope you've enjoyed it, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, we
thanks.
will. No, thank you. I would say it's an absolutely fantastic return to the podcast as well, Aaron. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Glad
I'm
to have you
excited
back.
now. As much a time as a greater time I've had with you guys. In the time that we went live, a trailer has been released where the premise is Liam Neeson has to keep driving or his family will explode. So I'm excited to watch that as soon as we get off. Yeah, love it, Liam
Brilliant.
Neeson.
Okay.
I'm just opening. I'm just opening that up now.
Well, I'm going to get off the podcast. So thank you so much, everyone, joining us today. We'll see you next Wednesday on the Mirror Game walkthrough at 4 p.m. BST. But for now, see you later. Bye bye.
Bye bye.